Welcome to the University Utara, Malaysia School of Computing. Today's lecture, under Dr. Jabbar Al-Maliki, focuses on the architecture of malicious software and our incident response to it. Picture this. Your phone buzzes with a text alert for a package delivery. You tap the link, a shipping site loads, and you dismiss it as simple spam. In the background, that single interaction has already initiated an automated sequence for unauthorized code execution. Look at this architectural stack diagram. As computer science students, you know how applications normally interact with the operating system. Malware is meticulously crafted to bypass user consent. An external malicious input forces past the application layer to execute unauthorized commands directly at the OS level. It then hijacks the CPU and RAM nodes, leveraging the machine's processing power against itself. Ultimately, malware forcefully shifts control of computing resources away from the user, turning everyday personal devices into invisible tools that serve hostile actors. This four-quadrant matrix illustrates the primary ways malware breaches a system. The four main vectors are social engineering, drive-by downloads, infected removable media, and supply chain attacks. Focusing closely on the social engineering quadrant, you see the mechanics of a macro attack. When a user opens an infected document and clicks Enable Content, they grant permission for an embedded script to run. That script reaches out to an external server, retrieves the main malware executable, and runs it entirely in the background. Once inside, the propagation method defines the threat. A classic computer virus must attach itself to a legitimate host file and requires human interaction, like opening an email attachment to spread. A worm, however, scans networks for vulnerabilities and copies itself from machine to machine entirely on its own. As seen here in these rows of silver industrial centrifuges, the Stuxnet worm demonstrated how digital code can cause real-world destruction. It spread initially via infected USB drives, a removable media vector, and then self-propagated across isolated networks to sabotage specific industrial control systems. Regardless of how we classify the malware, every successful infection relies on exploiting either a technical flaw in the software or a psychological vulnerability in the human operator. This system architecture visualization shows how a rootkit evades detection. By embedding itself at the kernel level, the rootkit intercepts standard OS requests. When the user opens the task manager, the rootkit filters out its own malicious processes and feeds the user a false, perfectly clean list. Here, the visualization contrasts the hard drive with the system's RAM to illustrate fileless malware. Instead of writing an executable file to the disk, which an antivirus might catch, it lives off the land. The attack utilizes legitimate, built-in administrative tools, like PowerShell, to execute malicious scripts directly in the memory. This image of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs represents the target of the Whispergate campaign, an example of wiper malware. Wipers do not hold data for ransom. Their objective is permanent destruction, often achieved by overwriting the hard drive's master boot record so the computer can no longer boot up. Malware behavior has shifted from simple file corruption to the active manipulation of core logic, administrative tools, and the memory architecture of the operating system itself. Recognizing an active infection requires monitoring for system-level red flags. Watch for sudden CPU performance degradation, unexplained high network traffic from background data exfiltration, or a built-in security suite that refuses to turn on. Let's test your active recall. As computer science students, if you identify these red flags, what are the first architectural steps you must take to isolate the threat before you even think about running an automated scan? Looking at our incident response flowchart, step 1 is to immediately disconnect the network, unplug the Ethernet cable, and disable Wi-Fi. This severs the malware's connection to its external command and control server, preventing further data theft and stopping the infection from spreading to other devices. Moving to step 2, you must boot the system into safe mode. This diagnostic state loads only the bare essential drivers. By blocking standard background applications and third-party daemon processes from executing on startup, you force the malicious payload to remain dormant. From there, you run thorough offline automated scans to quarantine and remove the files. However, notice the distinct path at the end of the flowchart. For deep-seated infections like complex rootkits, the only guaranteed method of removal is the nuclear option, completely wiping the hard drive and reinstalling the operating system. To survive attacks that permanently destroy or lock data, like ransomware and wipers, you rely on this framework, the 3-2-1 backup rule. You keep 3 total copies of your important data, stored on 2 different types of media, with 1 copy stored entirely off-site. You cannot buy total security in one software package. True cybersecurity is a rigorous, cultivated practice of architectural vigilance, consistent backups, and strict digital hygiene.